Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where we talk about all things movies. If you love talking about movies and staying up to speed on what's in theaters and what's worth checking out, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my reviews. Alright, with that, let's get into today's review, which is for Jurassic World Dominion. And I just got back from seeing this in the theater in IMAX 3D. And yeah, let's dive right on in. And so, as always, we will start off with a brief synopsis. So, in this film, 4 years after the destruction of Isla Nublar, if I'm saying that correct, I probably am not, dinosaurs now live and hunt alongside humans all over the world. This fragile balance will reshape the future and determine once and for all whether human beings are to remain the apex predators on a planet they now share with history's most fearsome creatures in a new era. So my anticipation going into this film was it's fluctuated as of late. So I enjoy the Jurassic Park and the Jurassic World movies. I think I've only seen the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I think it is. I think I only saw that once. So but I've seen the original Jurassic World a couple times, and I've seen the originals. Those I grew up on those. So it's I think the series has kind of had its ups and downs in quality. So you kind of never know what you're going to get with any specific film, especially because they don't always tie them directly, story for story beat one to the next. But the trailers looked interesting enough, and I thought I had seen on Rotten Tomatoes when I was looking at some other things that this was at like 88% earlier in the week, but I think I just misread something there because I knew going into this film that this was actually down in like I think the 30% something in there, and it was like the lowest rated of the franchise on Rotten Tomatoes. So that definitely sunk my expectations going in. I was hoping that it would be a fun film, but certainly not expecting anything great. So that was kind of my approach. And with that, let's get into my thoughts for the movie. Now, this is going to be a spoiler review. Just a lot of what I want to talk about gets into things that happen throughout the entire film. So I thought it would be a lot more fun to just talk about it openly. So here's your spoiler warning. You've been warned. And to begin, we'll just talk about some general things, and then we'll go into just kind of a character discussion, character by character. I think that's going to be the easiest way to talk about the movie. But generally, the things that I did like the music. The composer for this music is Michael Giacchino, and he brings back some of the really beautiful themes that he brought to the first Jurassic World movie and has been using. I don't consciously remember, but I assume he reused them in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. So those were great to hear back, and you get hints of the original themes by John Williams in there. So Michael Giacchino, he's I think one of the best composers that of the current composers that are out there, and yeah, he does a great job with this movie as well. I thought the production value of the film as a whole was really good, but I mean that's got to be a given for how big the budget was. I don't know what it was, but this is a blockbuster film. It's got lots of money, and at least you can they did a good job. But that's I hope they did, given they had that much money. And then I thought the premise of the film, kind of the main problem, was interesting, having this locust, genetically modified locust, getting out of hand to potentially cause a global famine. But I thought that it wasn't necessarily the best premise for a Jurassic movie. That's not really what I'm going to a Jurassic movie for at this point. But I mean, at this point, when you're on the sixth one, maybe you just got to try to do something different. So, although I don't know why there was such a big problem if the what was the name? It's Biosyn, I think, is the name of the company. If their crops were being untouched, sure, there'd probably be a famine, but there would still be food. It wouldn't be like all humans extinct. So I feel like we lost sight of that as the film went on, and so it would have been a problem, but maybe not as big as people thought. But yeah, so those were a couple of things I liked. The things that I didn't really care for was the general story. I thought the story and the screenplay were not very good in this film. Things just kind of happen. I think the line has a very quotable or the movie has a very quotable line for this, where they're crashing the plane, and Owen asks, "What's the plan?" And the pilot I think her name is Kayla. Yeah, Kayla. She responds, "What happens happens. So that's the plan." And that's kind of how this story felt. It felt like things were just happening and nobody was really contributing to the overall story. And there were just several times I was just kind of laughing out loud. I went to see this with my brother and sister-in-law, so it was more easy to laugh out loud when you have other people who can hear you. But definitely laughing out loud at some of the absurdities of the movie and just like the how things just kind of happen. You're like, of course that happened because we needed to get the these characters to move up or meet up again and that sort of thing. So that I thought was a pretty big weak point of the film. And then kind of along those lines, there's a lot of like really good shots throughout the film, but I found them kind of pretentious in a way where it felt like somebody's like, oh, what would be cool to throw in a Jurassic World movie? Oh, we should have like the big dinosaur come through this like circular shape, and then we can get like that shot of what's on the logo, and we can do this and that. And so it felt like somebody who's like a big Jurassic World fan had all these ideas, and they just wanted to like cram them in there, but they didn't really fit with the story, so they felt out of place, and like they were trying too hard at the same time. So those were the things that I didn't care for as much. And now we'll go into just a discussion of the different characters, things that I liked about them, and things I didn't care for. So this is in no particular order, although I'm kind of grouping them based off of characters that are kind of more related to each other within the story. So first and foremost, we have Owen. I thought that he's fine. I didn't think he had very much character development, so he's just kind of in this movie. And also, like, I know we've seen this character in 3 movies now, but it's still hard for me to buy that he's as, like, it's hard for me to buy the character given that I see so much of, like, Andy Dwyer and Star-Lord and the silliness of those characters in him, where that's really not what this character is. That's not what Owen is. He's a very serious and, like, a very serious person. I mean, he jokes a little bit, but he's like fully capable of taking care of himself, and he's not an idiot in the least. But given that Chris Pratt plays those sort of characters so very often, it's hard to separate those, and that was still apparent in this movie. Next up, we have Claire. I actually liked what they've been doing with her character a lot, and so far as like time has passed since especially the first film, and it's been 4 years since the second film here. And in the first film, she was this, high heel wearing corporate employee who, yeah, was not able to really hold her own. I mean, she was able to outrun a T-Rex in heels, sure, but she felt like she was very out of her element in the first film. But by now, and especially I think it's mainly her relationship, well, maybe not mainly, but I think it's partially at least due to her relationship with Owen and him kind of rubbing off on her and the lifestyle that they're living where they're just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. At this point in her life, she's very much more capable and able to hold her own. Again, not to say she couldn't really hold her own, but she does so, or before in the earlier films, I think she's just kind of evolved into that a bit more. She's no longer that corporate employee, and I think that's a very natural kind of evolution of the character. So I like to see that in this film. And then next up is Maisie. I thought she was a great character, and I thought the actress played her well. I think she was the most interesting character in the film. Just being, a clone and posing questions like, she's got her self-identity kind of crisis, thinking that she's not a real person or a unique person, and kind of those more philosophical questions which are centered around her character. That's what I found interesting. So that I think ties into how much I did like her character. And then a new addition to the cast or the team was the pilot. I think her name is Kayla Watts. I thought that she was, she didn't like override the story or anything, but I thought she was a good new addition, an interesting enough character who wasn't like completely black or white. She's got her backstory, but at the end of the day, she's somebody who's trying to help out, but again, another very capable individual. So I thought she brought a lot to the movie, and it was good to have her in it. And then the next 3 that I want to talk about are the 3 OG doctors from the original. So we have Dr. Sattler, and I mean, it wasn't the worst storyline to bring them in, but it felt a little contrived. But I mean, I get that they wanted to bring back the original characters, and this was, I think, as good of a way as you could do it. But ultimately, I didn't really find their storyline all that interesting. I thought it was just great to see Laura Dern, and watching the movie, it just made me want to go back and watch Big Little Lies, which is one of the more recent things that I've seen her in, and she's just a phenomenal actress. So, same thing with, Dr. Grant. He was fine. I didn't really find their characters all that interesting. So, I mean, I did grow up on the Jurassic Park movies. They weren't like the biggest movie I grew up on, not as big as like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. But since those movies were like already out, I don't like, I grew up on them, so they're just kind of in my memory. So I'm not as like emotionally attached to those movies. So, and likewise then with these characters. So like I'm familiar enough with them, but like I don't get emotional just by seeing them together on screen. But I can see how other people might, and people who, can remember going to maybe see the first film in theaters. Like I don't remember the first time watching Jurassic Park. I just remember that it was a thing I watched growing up. But of the three, I thought Dr. Malcolm was the best, mainly because of the comedy that he brought to the film. He's comedic gold. He has so many one-liners and just zingers. It's great. And the way that they're delivered, it's just, oh yeah, that was the laughs that I was laughing, because of the film wanted me to laugh, were all due to Malcolm. I definitely laughed at the film a number of times, but that was just laughing at the film, not because it was trying to get me to laugh. So next up, then, we have the kind of the antagonists of the film, or the people running the Biosyn complex. And of these, so we have Ramsey Cole, and I thought it was kind of interesting to have another like inside man. I guess that would make sense that you had somebody bring in Malcolm, and then Malcolm is bringing in Sattler and Grant. But I thought, like, at first I laughed out loud when he just like left them alone, but now it makes sense. So I'll give them that. I rescind that laugh out loud. When he's like, oh, I'll be back in 30 minutes. Don't go down to the lower levels. And you're like, of course they're going to go down to the lower levels. But obviously he was in on it, so that's why he left them alone. But I didn't buy in for 1 second that the complex, like once they found out that Sattler and Grant were up to no good, how did they not immediately realize that Cole was also in on it? Like, they realized Malcolm was, but like, did they not see Cole? Just let them get on the train to try to get out of the complex? Like, I don't know. So I didn't buy that, and so it just didn't really have me invested, especially in the scene that we have later where he's basically reveals that he's been helping them all along to the main guy, or the head of the company. So I don't know. I liked parts of his character, but I didn't buy that they didn't know that he was in on it. Then we have Dr. Henry Wu. I thought it was interesting to make him actually more interested in doing science for good in this film. Like in the past, especially the first Jurassic World, he was more into the science for the sake of the science and didn't really care about the repercussions. So it was nice to see him actually kind of care about that and look at this technology and say, hey, how can we help? So that was good to see some evolution in that character. And then lastly, we have Lewis Dodgson. I feel like there should be an E in there, but I just pulled the name off of IMDb. But it's the main guy in charge. It's the guy that owns the company, the Biosyn. And I thought he was acted very well. Like the actor played him as, I liked when he was like nervous talking to Sattler and Grant, but then like fully in control when he's talking to his employees. Like he said, he didn't really stutter, but he was clearly nervous talking to the doctors. But yeah, I thought he was acted well, but his character just kind of, I don't know. He started off seeming like he might be kind of interesting, but he just turned into this very one-dimensional, like, we gotta, I don't know, we gotta do all the stupid things just to do them. Like, we're gonna burn the evidence, but in a way that makes it destroy the whole facility. Like, how is there how is there no plane? Like, how did they just let the locusts destroy their whole complex? Like, there was no thought, and he just was reacting very impulsively. And I feel like to be a head of a company, like you need to not have like maybe there's elements of that, but you have to have that under control. Like you don't get to be head of a company and be that impulsive. So yeah, again, I didn't think his character was written all that well. So, and then there's a couple side characters like the CIA and Black Market kind of side story in the second act. That was fine. I yeah, I mean, I did laugh out loud at like the poacher or whatever you want to call him that shows up in the beginning and captures Beta and Maisie, but like he just looks like a villain. He looks like he's straight out of a western wearing a black hat and sitting on a black horse, and he's like yeah, like it's very funny when movies still kind of trope like play these tropes up, and it's yeah, a little absurd in my opinion. But last thing I want to talk about is the dinosaurs. I thought there were good and bad ones throughout. Like there were ones that were interesting. The ones that I found most interesting were kind of the ones with feathers. I thought that was kind of something relatively new that kept things fresh. But in general, I thought the dinosaurs were kind of underwhelming, and like the action the action sequences again was fairly underwhelming, and I didn't really feel that any of the main characters were ever in too much danger. So I think that's a problem with a Jurassic World movie. You got to have your characters in seemingly real danger. Like they're up against this big thing, the big bad, and they're just like sneaking around a car, and then it looks at them, gets sight of them, and then it just moves super super slowly so they can run away. Like how is that an apex predator? I don't like. You have a group of 6. How do all of them get away? Or is more than 6? I think it was what, 7. So like I don't know. I didn't buy into the danger. Although I did like how they fought back against that one. Like as a team, as humanity united, that's how we're better than the dinosaurs, and that's how we're the apex predator. Humanity, like a single human, is not the apex predator. It's humanity, and that yeah, we got to come together, and that together we like working as a team, we're strong, and we can fight back against this huge dinosaur. So I thought that scene was pretty good. But yeah, overall, I think the Jurassic movies just hit the peak with Jurassic World. Like when they like the dinosaur they created in that film, and that eventually was taken out by the T-Rex and the Raptors, or well, like, it was actually the big one in the ocean, whatever that was called. But like they kind of hit their peak there, and how do you go bigger and badder than that? Well, I don't know that you really can, and this movie doesn't really. And so I think there again it feels like it's coming up short. But it's mainly just because we're 6 movies into the series, and there's only so far you can go. Unless you're doing, the Fast and the Furious approach, where you just fly to the moon. Let's put dinosaurs in space, maybe. I don't know. But so I had mixed feelings on the dinosaurs. But overall, I would say this was a meh film. It was like I did laugh. I had some fun with it. I would say I laughed at the movie more than I laughed because of the jokes being made or because it was supposed to be funny. But it was a very weak story. There was not a whole lot of like good action, and I wasn't like on the edge of my seat ever. And I think without any of those elements, it just ends up being a pretty meh film, especially for a Jurassic movie. So my letter grade is a C, and what that means is I don't recommend this movie. I'm not saying I recommend that you don't see it. It's not one that I'm going to recommend. So it's, I wouldn't just tell people to go see this. Even if you're going to the theater and looking for something to watch, it's not one that would be on my list of recommendations. Not like as compared to say Top Gun. I would say that one is definitely a recommendation. I'd definitely see that again over this. But yeah, those are my thoughts. It's a little disappointing that is my verdict on the film. I had hoped for better, but I wouldn't say I'm like disappointed. I think I had calibrated my expectations to be about where it came out. So if you've seen the film though, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are some of the parts that you liked? Especially, I mean, it's not all bad, fortunately. There were things that I liked about the film, so I'd love to hear the things that you enjoyed, and yeah, feel free to spoil away. This is a spoiler review, so with that, if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews. And yeah, with that, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next review.